Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I must apologize for us starting a few minutes late. I'm still getting some financial statements printed for the media. My name is Hlomela Bucwa. I'm the Provincial Youth Chairperson for the DA Youth. And today we are here as DASO together with the DA Youth to speak and expose maladministration in the SRC of NMMU. Because as an organization, we fundamentally believe that we need to fight corruption at all levels. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the two colleagues on my right. Immediate right being Mr. Yusuf Cassim, who is a DA Youth Chairperson and a Member of Parliament. Next to him is our presidential candidate for DASO at NMMU, Ms. Hlomela Bucwa. They will be reading out the statement for the media, and we'll also be handing out the financial statement to everyone. I'll hand over to Ms. Bucwa.
Thank you, Hlomela, and I just want to also welcome members of the media that are present and all others that are present. And before I hand over to our very competent presidential candidate, who together with her colleagues at the university, our competent members on the SRC and our DASO as an organization, has done tremendous work in exposing what is likely being covered up at the university. I want to be able to just introduce all those that are present to what is actually taking place before we go through the details that are in the statement, as well as the financial statements that will be laid out. I myself am a previous SRC president at NMMU. We have looked at budgets in the past, and this is not a first instance. It is something that is really symptomatic of the ANC Alliance SASCO's governance at NMMU, whether it was before DASO came into governance in 2012 and after they came into governance now in 2014. It is something that the university itself must be indicted for, and it will be clear in the statements why. Because the funds that are being used by students, by the SRC, it is a levy from each student and it is coming from council funding. So by virtue of it being council funding, it means that the university itself needs to take responsibility for being able to ensure that it is used for the purpose that it is used for. Now, if it is used for any other purpose, for example, if university policy says that you should not be hiring vehicles for yourself to use, as was done this year, and the university is well aware of that, it is in contravention of what is the substructures of council's policies, and it means that council funds has formally been misused and maladministration just in that one small instance has taken place. But that is just one instance, and there are many, many other instances that we are going to outline and we'll open up for questions afterwards. But this isn't something that we have just got bits and pieces of information. We have full financial statements that we have retrieved through members at the university. And those financial statements on the press release that is being sent out nationally, the link to those statements are going to be on there so that any person of the public and of the media would be able to access the raw data directly, the evidence of how the money was spent, so that what we are saying here today can be verified. And we are having our staff also print out for those that are present, and that will be handed out before we leave here today as well. So the main points are that there has been maladministration, that there has been a gross lack of disrespect for the funds or council funds and funds that should be used to assist students, and that this has resulted in students being disadvantaged, number one. But number two, what it has also showed is that the university itself, who we have made aware of this in the past, and who is well aware of this, has not done anything about it. And that we need to now show the community, we need to show students that are there that this is taking place and that something needs to be done about it, because it seems and appears to be that the university itself is content in really sweeping these matters under the carpet. But I'm going to hand over to our presidential candidate, and I'm going to then outline some of the more outrageous expenditures further in the statement. Thank you, Hlomela.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I must firstly welcome the media and thank you for being present here today. Obviously, we meet under unpleasant circumstances. However, we believe that this is a matter of urgency and something that has to be addressed quickly. Under the leadership of SASCO and the led SRC, there's been gross maladministration and wasteful expenditure going behind the scenes. Colleagues believe that this is unacceptable and it's a matter that must be addressed urgently. It is common cause that the Department of Student Governance exercises oversight over the SRC budget. However, the effectiveness of this oversight function is brought into question today. And obviously, there are two reasons why. The first being that it is evident from the financial statement itself and the records of the SRC that the SRC officer employed for this function by the student government on numerous occasions has approved the expenses that are against the resolutions, that of MANCO, being management of the institution, and that of Senate itself. The second is that in most transactions, the expenditure is dramatically different from that which was proposed from the SRC. It is common cause that the SRC treasurer, each and every month on a standing meeting, is supposed to submit to us the budget of the SRC and, of course, the transaction that has transpired. When one compares these two statements, they do not correlate with each other. Therefore, it means that there's some incorrectness and something going on behind the scenes in the institution itself. Therefore, we believe that this must be brought to attention of the public because it does affect our students. And we've always vowed to say we'll protect them regardless of what transpires. We're doing this not because we want to make a political scene. We're not doing this because we want to gain votes. We're doing this because it is what is right. And we must always stand out for that which is right and advocate for our students and the betterment of the institution itself. So I'm going to hand over to Yusuf, who will just briefly outline some of these transactions that have transpired during the year, and obviously we'll further then proceed from there.
Okay, colleagues, I'm going to refer you to the statement that has been handed out. There's one or two points that I'm just going to add in as we go along, and I'm going to try and explain them as much and as in the most simple terms as possible, so that we can understand, how this has really materialized during the year. But I think the most important point that we must bear in mind, I'm going to wrap it up at the end, is that this isn't something that happens by accident. There are individuals that are directly responsible for what takes place. Individuals who are employed by the university that are supposed to approve how council funding is being spent. Those individuals are complicit in this as well. And the university itself has a responsibility to council in order to ensure that the funds are being spent in the purpose that it must be spent, and it's not being misused or stolen or any fraud being taking place. We have notified the university, and we have no responses have been forthcoming, no consequences have been forthcoming, no one has been held responsible. It is a typical instance that we have found in the past where these things get dragged under the carpet. Whether or not it's because it has got to do with an ANC-aligned organization, I think those are the questions that we are willing to ask. But let me go through some of the main points. And I'm going to start off with the first point, which talks about over 37,000 Rand of student funding, which has been paid directly into the personal academic accounts of the 7 SASCO members. Now, this is clear abuse, and it's along political lines. SASCO governs the SRC. It then takes student funds that should be used on student programs and pays it into their academic accounts for the fees of their own members, which is clear maladministration. Council funds can never be used for these purposes in the manner that it has been done, and it is really a way of distributing patronage amongst one's own members of their political organization. The next point, which highlights really wasteful expenditure rather than particularly maladministration, speaks about a touch under 170,000 Rand, which has been spent by these SASCO SRC members or for the members of the organization at restaurants and other catering services. Now, what happens is, and this has become symptomatic of SASCO, the ANC-aligned SASCO's leadership or taking over of an SRC to use student monies for their own benefit, is they then go and use the SRC budget of student money to feed themselves and their cronies and their friends at the catering services at the university. And this was happening all the while students did not have meal allowances until April and May of this year, because of, and we've highlighted this in the past, the way that the centralized NSFAS project has been rolled out under the SASCO governance watch. But while students are being starving because they don't have money, their meal allowances have not been received, SASCO has now gone through the SRC to use student funds to buy food for themselves and to really eat on a regular basis at restaurants for themselves. This is in stark contrast to the way that we have governed in the past, and I'll note you back to 2012, for example, where students would only receive their meal allowances maybe 2 months late, and we then went and used the SRC budget to develop meal parcels that would be distributed to the general student population and those that are on NSFAS but are not receiving meal allowances. So it shows a disconnect of the governance, but it's obviously wasteful expenditure in itself. I'm going to go down a bit more just to highlight some of the main points. I'm not going to go through every single point because we've tried to make some comparisons just to show how dire this wasteful expenditure really is. But I'm going to move to the point around guest houses, where 78,000 Rand was spent on accommodation and guest houses for these SASCO SRC members through the governance of the SRC. And particularly highlighted was 21,000 Rand at Jabula Lodge. Now there's a reason why the 21,000 Rand is highlighted, because there was clear fraud in reporting by the SRC itself at student parliament, where they had said to students that we did not use student money to go and stay at Jabula Lodge. It was an allegation that was leveled by DASO at the time. The financial statements now have showed otherwise, that they have now, through fraudulent reporting, covered up the way that they've spent this money. And it was actually spent just for the small group of connected individuals controlling the SRC funds to go and have really a holiday on student money. Go and stay at a lodge, book it out for themselves, and take a weekend out. And we have information where at that particular stay, it was SASCO members from the organization that came together at Jabula Lodge in order to really have a party on students' money. The next point, which is particularly outrageous as well, it's something which I myself was shocked when I saw it on the financial statements, 103,580 Rand, which was deposited directly into an individual's bank account. Now this is highly irregular. We have highlighted the name of SV Ngaru, and this is something which the university should never even allow to have happened. And we know SASCO has a record of misusing student funds, but it should never have been allowed to happen. That is a tremendous amount of money. It is money that should have been used to assist those students that had student debts, for example, students that did not have meals and book allowances in the first 4 or 5 months of this year, students who do not have money to pay for their residences in the beginning of this year. However, it was deposited into a single person's account, and who this person is not clear. We've made inquiries, it has not been forthcoming, and really it is a way of siphoning off money from student accounts for one's own benefit. They then went and deposited into other personal accounts as well. The Treasurer and Secretary General so think about it this way. You have an SRC, the President, the Treasurer General, and the Secretary General sits on the Financial Committee, which does all the expenditure. The SRC itself doesn't have any power to approve expenditure. They then pay themselves money into their own personal accounts. And the monies are highlighted, it's also in the financial statements as well. This is irregular no matter where you are, whether it is, because this is a public entity, you must understand. And these funds must be audited as such. These individuals that have paid themselves these monies into their own accounts, and it reflects their names on the financial statements as well, that it has been paid into their accounts. They then went and paid another one of their previous SRC members. There was an SRC member named Sita Gomfa who was on the SRC for 3 months. They went and paid 12,000 Rand over a number of multiple payments into his personal account as well, which is similar to the previous item. And they also paid the Secretary General 10,000 Rand into his account. They went as far as to subsidize their own political organization. It's no different, for example, if government went to go and subsidize an ANC rally or an ANC event and fund that event. This is exactly what took place. They went and took 5,000 Rand. They went and paid that money for a SASCO event at the Missionville campus where burgers were distributed to students under a SASCO banner, using the SRC funds for political activities in this instance. And then just tying it up with what they have done in the huge wasteful expenditure, over 194,000, it's not immediately detailed on this, but it is on the financial statements, 194,000 Rand on the student parliament itself was misused at a time when students were in need of funding themselves, to book them into the Boardwalk Hotel, to book a broad base of student leadership there, and that was excluding the security costs over there. So when you add that, it goes well over 200,000 Rand in an activity and an event that shouldn't cost over 50,000 Rand in order to run itself, and that we have shown in previous years itself. And then finally, just in the example that I cited at the beginning when I started, in the hiring of vehicles. And I want to go into this because there was a reason why the university took a resolution why SRC should not be able to hire vehicles. And this resolution means that we have put a limit on how these council funds must be spent. Obviously that was this year now contravened. But 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, so in the 2010 SRC, which was also governed by SASCO, the SRC president at the time went and hired a vehicle on student money. He became inebriated with alcohol. He did not have a license. He drove that vehicle under the influence of alcohol. He crashed that vehicle. And student money then needed to be used to pay off that vehicle. So it was after that incident under SASCO governance then already that the university said we are not going to allow the hiring of vehicles. This year they went and hired vehicles. It was allowed by the student governance officers. They used those vehicles to travel even long distances in direct contravention of the policy that was created by university on how council funds must be spent. Now, colleagues and members of the media, these are obviously very serious matters. It's something that we believe urgent action must be taken by the institution itself, and an investigation with recommendations for prosecutions of those who have been found to have been really responsible in these matters. Actions must be taken against those matters. And I just want to highlight, and the last point that is made here is that what has ended up happening because of this, all that has taken place, is that most of the student budget that needed to be spread out over the year to assist students to run SRC activities and events has been depleted. And that is, it's going to be evident in the statements, and even that doesn't show the full extent of the problem, because there would be other service providers that is owed money that has not yet been paid out and would not have been deducted from the account as already. But just even discounting that fact, from the operational budget of close to 2 million rand, close to 1.7 million rand has already been spent as of 7th of August, with many other events that still need to be taking place for students, many other activities that still need to take place. And as I said, this is not really showing the other monies that is owed to service providers that must still be deducted from the accounts. Now, the Treasurer General of the SRC is required to prepare and present financial statements quarterly. This has not taken place. The Department of Student Governance and Development has allowed this not to take place and has not done anything about it until this point. The SRC Constitution dictates that it is compulsory for a yearly audit to take place. And this has not taken place. And it hasn't taken place in previous years as well. And the university, whenever this is raised, has tried to sweep this under the carpet. We are saying that because of even that negligence by the department itself, it has allowed the SASCO and those that are governing the SRC and are controlling the budgets to do what they have done, to really harm students the way they have done. Clearly it is clear, not only is there fraud and maladministration that is taking place, but the misusage, I think, is more outrageous, because students have suffered throughout this year, in particular under SASCO's governance, and they have still suffered to misuse student money in this effect, in the way that this has been done. It raises serious questions of integrity. We request that the Department of Student Governance immediately take action on this matter, and that the SASCO-led SRC is held accountable for this, but not only them, those that have allowed this to take place, they are also held accountable for this, and that the university is able to report back on the audit and how that has taken place in itself. We also would go as far as to say that those that have misused money and have been complicit in misusing money, must they themselves pay back the money. And they must do that so that that money can be used for the benefit of students going forward, because what we anticipate is that there is going to be another deficit in the SRC budget that must be covered by the following SRC budget if service providers are owed. It's not the first time that has taken place. The last time SASCO governed in SRC in 2011, they left a debt in the budget for the then incoming DASO leadership to have to cover that debt with the following year's students' contributions, which is unfair. And it's not something that should be allowed to take place in themselves. So I'm going to leave it at that, colleagues, and we want to hand over to the chairperson to open up the floor for any questions.
Thank you very much, colleagues. At this point in time, we've just handed out the financial statements that has been referred to all the media houses. We'll open up a round of questions. 2 rounds in case there's any follow-up questions. But we'll be taking 3 questions from each media house, and we'll open up another round should there be any follow-up questions. I'll be noting hands for questions.
Yeah, what is the response by the university to this training that was by SASCO members? Has they responded to this?
Just note the hands. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
The what we have found that you have in the statement, over what period is this? Over what time frame?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for you in order to reveal this maladministration, you will need to be in possession of the financial statement, so which we have seen now. So my question now will be, how credible is this statement that you have provided us? So in fact, how did you get hold of the statement?
Sure. Thank you very much. Yusuf.
Let me start, and I think Mel will add, will come in where we are. Colleagues, just in response to the first question, there was an SRC MANCO meeting where certain aspects of this was raised by some of our members of the SRC where we are in opposition. And the university always says we are going to look into it. And it's been a while. There's been no looking into it that we are aware of. And there's been nothing that's been done to these individuals. We've exposed this in the past, by the way, when nothing has happened to the individuals concerned or responsible. And this is our concern again, that it happens every single year that SASCO is in governance and people get away with these things. It's not the first time where individuals are getting away with, from SASCO are getting away with matters. You'll remember in the 2012 SRC elections where SASCO members broke into a voting station, damaged university property. There was a big reporting of it in the media. There wasn't any follow-up by the university. They said they launched an investigation, which they did, but no one was held accountable for that. At the end of the day, people got away with it in that instance, and we don't want to allow that to happen again. On the question of the period of time, it is the 2014 year. So when an SRC gets elected in the previous year, they come into office at the beginning of the next year. So at the beginning of this year, they came into office, and the SRC budget is taken from the registration fees of students. So when a student pays registration fee at the beginning of the year, 145 Rand from every student then goes into the SRC budget, which is allocated through council funding. So it goes to, it's part of council funding. Council then takes that money, which is ring-fenced, and moves it into an SRC budget, which is then managed by the Student Governance Department, and obviously from the political side or the governance side on the SRC, it is done by the Financial Committee of the SRC, which includes the SRC President and the SRC Treasurer and the SRC Secretary General, members that have been paid money into their own individual accounts. The credibility of the statement, we got the statement, and it's very difficult for us because we can't necessarily give the name of the person that has made the statement available for us by fear of that person being victimized by the institution itself. But we had to go and get the statement by an individual who had access through finance to relay the statement. We have verified that it's 100% credible, but also this statement should be available publicly. And these statements should be available publicly. It has not been made available because, for the instance, I mean, you can see what is in these statements is being hidden from the public eye. So we had to then make sure that we get the statement leaked to us, and we then went to verify that it is credible through the various structures of the university, that this is actually the statement. But also I think the question raises a very important point, because it should be made available for anyone that requests it, but it's not being made available for that. And I would actually encourage the media itself to now also join us in taking up this public responsibility, in making sure that we are holding the departments accountable for making these things as public available. The only thing that is being made public is a treasurer's report from the SRC, which we have shown to be misleading and false. It's misreporting. They've misreported left, right, and center. And there's no way, because there isn't this audit that should be taking place, that is taking place, that is then become credible. So we have to go to the raw data and try and distribute the raw data, which we feel is our responsibility. I don't know if you want to add anything, President.
It's precisely to that of the response of the institution, and we always say that as an organization we understand procedure and we uphold the rule of law. And as such, before we even got to the stage, we asked ourselves, how do we get access And as such, we took it upon ourselves to send an email to the institution, to the Student Governance Department precisely, and we still did not get a response. We referred to the Treasurer General of the SRC, who still said the issue is still pending. And as such, we then went on another step to ask management, can we get access to these funds, and there's still no response. Even earlier this year, there were issues that we had problems with as SRC members who said, this is not supposed to be transparent. I give you an example of the first year's picnic, when there was electioning done and students were taken from an SRC event and were taken to go register to go vote for the ANC. And we said, this is wrong, this should never even happen, because any institution is supposed to represent students and be neutral to their benefit. And we complained about these matters when we told these are petty issues, and that we will look into it and nothing has been done, even thus far. And none of the credibility of the statement believe that if we still question it, then the SRC is supposed to be forced, and the institution itself must release a statement to prove to us whether is this the one we have credible enough or not. But in terms of that, we've gone through the right processes and procedures, and there was still no response on our behalf. And actually, even that of the time frame, this is only until August. So it's quite possible that the SRC there's more matters that have happened afterwards that we don't know about.
But just to confirm, colleagues, this was leaked. In fact, the way that it is done, it's exactly how it is on the systems itself. So it's not something that can be constructed, but it is something that it shows the account numbers. If you want to know the account numbers, it shows exactly, on the system how is that actually managed from an accounting point of view, and the budget in the Student Governance Department.
Thanks, colleagues. Remember, colleagues, you can ask 3 questions at a time. No need to limit yourself. Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarity for me, in terms of, you're making very serious allegations here, fraud, maladministration, and so forth. But just explain this, are these directed towards SASCO only? Or SASCO in conjunction, maybe some of the staff members of the university? In essence, staff and university. Are you saying there's fraud within SASCO and the university, or just SASCO? Secondly, for me, why now and when was this report leaked? If I ask this, because if I'm not mistaken, you have elections coming up soon, right? SRC elections?
Yes.
So in that context, could this maybe be just in terms of the timing, an electioneering tool that you put
Sure.
in?
That's a fair question.
Just those 2 questions.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, there's no means because now that you have said this has been going on for such a long time. So I was going to ask, why are you only raising it now? Is it politically motivated, or you just trying to fix what you see like it's not going?
Sure. Thanks. Are there any other questions, please? Okay.
I think I can deal with some of these, and I can hand over to Hlomela. But let me deal with the last question first, whether it is politically motivated or not. Look, when we received this link, and it was very recently, within the last month, when we received this link, we immediately sought to investigate, is this statement credible, number 1? Number 2, what do the various items mean on the statement? Because the statements aren't there's a reference when you make an expenditure. So it's not something that you can immediately draw, inferences as to how was this amount gone to for catering, for example, or for transport, or for hiring of cars, whatever the case may be. So when we receive the statements, and we've been trying for a long time to receive those statements, it's not as if we are waking up now. Throughout the year, we have been trying to receive these things, and we've been blocked from receiving these statements. So we've been trying for a long time to receive them. When we received them, we immediately investigated the items on the statements. We also went to internally within the university to raise certain aspects with the university itself. It wasn't supposed to be, we wanted to see, can the university do something about it immediately? First, we wanted to correct this on behalf of students to make sure there's something substantial that is taking place. But we also, and it's not as if we are just having this press conference now in order to then come to you at this point. We also then arranged with a media house, and I'm not going to mention the name of the media house here in the Eastern Cape, where we then made this information known to this person from the media house, and we even drafted items from that. But we were then told by that individual, well, I'm not allowed to send this out. I'm not sure what the reason was, but my editor said, you know, I need to do other work on this before I can send this out. So there was clearly, in our view, some sort of delaying tactic to make sure that, well, these individuals are not held accountable for what they have done. And therefore, we thought we need to then call a press conference and make this as publicly and widely known as possible. But also, I mean, there's always the political aspect. The only way, or the best way to hold any governance accountable is through the ballot box. So the huge chunk of accountability would have been removed had others been successful in delaying us from really making this known until after the elections. Because then accountability has been circumvented in a large part, and I mean, and that's completely valid. And it is our duty in opposition on the SRC to be exposing these matters so that we can hold the governance accountable for that. But it brings me to our first point, or the first question that was raised. And where are we directing these allegations at? And I think it's clearly the governance of the SRC and SASCO governance of the SRC who control the budgets that were directly perpetuating what has taken place. Now, we are not saying, and we do not have any evidence that can really link, it would be tenuous to say that the university itself is perpetuating fraud or maladministration. That is not an allegation that we are leveling, or members in the student governance department. But what we are saying is that they have been neglectful of their responsibilities to allow this to take place. So even if the SASCO-governed SRC wanted to go and pay 100,000 rand in the student's account, or wanted to go and hire cars which was against university policy, or pay themselves, or whatever the case may be as outlined here, it should never have been approved by the student governance department. So they are obviously complicit in allowing that to take place, because they have certain responsibilities designated to them by council to make sure that the budgets are approved or expenditures approved properly, that it's approved in relation to a budget which has been presented to council, and that the expenditure is done in that matter. But what the other matter that we are directing at the university is not only that they were complicit in allowing this to take place, but also they, number one, through the years should reasonably well have known that this is taking place. But also that when we made them, made it known to them that certain things are taking place, they have not acted immediately. It's a very serious matter. It's got to do with council funds at the end of the day. And that is linked back to the Higher Education Act. It's linked back to a number of matters. So this is obviously something that is for the public good, the knowledge that is for the public good, action that is to be taken for the benefit of the public good, which we don't see taking place. And it shouldn't be our job alone to try and make sure that that takes place. University has a responsibility, and we feel that they could do more. And we are asking them now to take urgent action so they can redeem themselves by taking urgent action against those that were responsible. We know that these type of frauds do take place in various departments, but we want them to take action, and that's the very least that we can ask for, and make sure that the right systems are put in place so that this doesn't happen again, to have a look at where did the internal controls fail in the department, and have a look at why the audit hasn't taken place, and when is that audit going to take place. I think that should be clear. If it's not clear, I can try and elaborate more on that.
Anything to add? Just for purposes of clarity, I'm going to ask, are there any other questions from the floor that would like to be posed? All right.
Maybe just another point of clarity from me.
Sure.
In terms of the current SRC, which is led by SASCO, I believe,
yes.
Were any members of DASO part of the SRC, but maybe specifically the guys who would push on budgets?
Yes, sure.
And is there a difference? Is there maybe, say, a group which actually sets where the budget is allocated and where the general SASCO SRC members set?
Sure. Thanks. Would you? Do you have any follow-up questions?
Okay, no, mnabenza cela usisi after azamenisho ngathela ke ngesixhosa.
Okay.
Okay, so let me deal with it. And I think it's a very important question that you raised, and I appreciate it, because there's many people that don't understand how the process should take place. There are 21 members on the SRC. Now, how this works is that the party that wins the most votes in the proportional representative ballot or on the SRC gets to choose its seats of that 21 first. And the top 5, President, Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, Treasurer General, and deputy president, those top 5 immediately become members of the what you call the SRC executive. And the SRC itself then chooses an additional member to be the 6th member on the SRC executive. Okay? Also from the SRC constitution, there's a FinCom, which approves payments. That FinCom is made up of the SRC president, the Secretary General, and the Treasurer General, and any other members that they add on to that from the SRC. DASO has 7 members on the SRC who are in opposition. But we are ordinary members of the SRC. We are not part of the SRC executive, which has insight into how funds are being expended at that level, or part of the FinCom, which has the power to spend funds or to make expenditures. So our members, and Hlomela is actually one of them, who is part in opposition in the SRC, and we have others, have been the ones that would like to try and find out why are you doing this, ask those questions, or are the ones that are going to assist students directly as SRC members or as individual SRC members. But the SRC governance by SASCO itself has then failed as a whole. They are the ones that have now perpetuated this fraud and wasteful expenditure. They are the only ones that can approve budgets, approve expenditures, and make expenditures take place. Our members do not have any power over that. In fact, doesn't even have an insight into how those finances are taking place. Hence, we had to now, we have failed to get that information through our SRC members on the SRC. We had to now rely on someone to leak the information to us so that we can expose what is taking place, because the SRC itself, accountability within that SRC has broken down. They do not want to be held accountable through the governance of the SRC, and where they have the majority of members being 14 members out of 21, they have now used that in order to misuse the SRC budget, use their positions by controlling the SRC executive and the FinCom to do that, and to hide information from the members. So our members then had to really go where they are being failed by the SRC, as individuals go and fight for them, as we've been doing throughout the year.
Well, can I just get word from the presidential candidate?
Yes.
I mean, Yusuf, you've been SRC president, as you rightly said from the start. And she has said also that, she tried by all means, but seemingly she could not get anywhere in terms of accessing this information at first. So the point for me is could you please switch it off? Probably my batteries are dead there. Just last one from me. Sorry, let me just put my phone here too. Thank you. All right. Is this, you mentioned a whole lot of checks and balances which should have been there and utilized within the SRC, within the student governance body or the university and so forth. So is this a matter, it's related to the first question I asked, is this about SASCO, or is this about the whole system of governance within the university, from whichever student body is in place or in governance at that time, or just the whole system within the university in terms of making sure that the checks and balances in terms of student funding are actually followed and checked in every instance? Maybe could I have just as closing statements from you?
Yeah, I'll start and then and let me start off when I was in the SRC, because I've had experience of this actually. And it actually disturbs me, because whenever we as a FinCom had to make expenditures, Mr. Ngapai, who was the Director of Student Governance and now standing in for the Dean, would scrutinize any type of requisition that was to be made. So if we had to make a requisition to an artist for an event, for example, he'd scrutinize and he'd have the right to approve or disapprove of that. We didn't have the power to go and approve the requisition. So let's say, for example, I woke up one day and say I want to pay myself 5,000 rand. It would have been, I feel at the time, impossible for me. So I believe that there was a system in place. Of course, as DASO, we remained accountable. We sent out our financial statements to all students on the NMMU Common League. We made sure that we were held accountable as students and we used the funds correctly. In fact, we even left a balance at the end of the year for the incoming SRC. But that's besides the point. You want to talk about the systems. Now, these are questions that I think the university will need to answer. Is how did those internal controls break down? How was it allowed for 100,000 rand to be paid into an individual account? I mean, that is not something that is ordinary. You know, I can understand if there's a 500 rand amount that is last minute, there are, procedures in place for that, or whatever the case may be, and you need it approved properly for an activity. But 100,000 rand does not fall into that category, or 10,000, 20,000, whatever the case may be. So I just want to reiterate it. SASCO is at fault for doing what they've done. They've done the wrong thing, okay? But the university must answer as to how were they allowed to do it under their watch, because they are ultimately responsible for oversight of council funds. The Student Governance Department is responsible for oversight of those funds. And they must then be able to respond as to how is that going to be fixed. Because you're right, it's a long-term thing. If that has broken down this year, there must be reasons for that. And maybe there are individuals there that just approved without looking at it properly. Maybe we know there are new staff members involved as well in the department that wasn't there when I was there. Perhaps they may be, and I'm not saying they are, they may be at fault for approving requisitions that they shouldn't have approved. And they would have, circumvented SASCO's attempts to commit fraud in that case. So I don't know if that answers it, but I don't have the information of how they are doing those requisitions at the moment, because it should be done how it was done in my time. But it seems to be that that is not the case, because this was allowed to take place.
Colleague, the question is not necessarily that which relates to quantity.
Just please move my phone, sorry.
It's honestly about accountability. It's about transparency. It's about good, clean governance. You speak about checks and balances. Our question is to come here and ask, how will a university allow that 6,000 rand should go to the girlfriend of a deputy president of the SRC? How is the university allowing that 100,000 rand can go to one individual? You need to remember this is students' money. That there's a parent who couldn't afford anything and decided to take their child to university. And us as an SRC, our primary mandate is to be of service to that student, is to give them access and ensure that they graduate in record time, is to enhance their student life. That is the purpose of that funding. Not for us to benefit by simply becoming SRC members, not for us to gain any interest in that fund. It should be there to be utilized for the service and the interest of the students. Therefore, we understand that there's supposed to be systems and checks and balances. However, we believe that those systems somehow has been an error. And those are things in which we're trying to find out. Hence, we're asking the institution itself, how can this be possible? How is this feasible? In an institution of higher learning, where we promote that of excellence, we promote things of accountability, we promote transparency in the university, yet these transactions are able to transpire. So it's not really about politics, but it's about doing and standing for that which is right, that of good and clean governance. And those are things in which we seek to regain, once gaining power and office as an organization in the past.
I just want to add something very quickly.
Before you do, could maybe just sum it up in the process if we have started appeasement, what you just said, the whole thing. Systems and checks and balances, just in summary, long term.
Silapha namhlanje sisidaso. Asizanga kuba sithanda, but siza kuba sithathe isigqibo sathi sifuna usebenza nabafundi bethu. And as such into ezenzekileyo kunyaka ziyasihlukumeza ngamandla. Silapha kwi-SRC yethu has failed abafundi bethu. And as such, we're saying that le nto eyenzekileyo kunyaka ingazophinde yenzeke. Ujonge indlela i-SASCO ephethe ngayo students apho umntu athi umele umfundi kodwa imali utya ngokwakhe empokothweni. We're saying that even isikolo siyenza njani ukuthi into enje iqhubekeke phambili. Therefore sifuna nathi uqonda inyani kwenzeke into kutheni imali engaka isetyenziswe ngelo hlobo kungathi abantu abekho. So silapha ke ngoku sifuna accountability, sifuna transparency, sifuna abantu baphathe abafundi kahle ngendlela efanelekileyo. Nathi i-organization simele bona nabaqasha wabo.
I just wanted to make a last point before I hand over to Andrea. Colleagues, and I think this is important even for those, because I know that this has been released nationally. This is not something that is an issue that is really isolated to NMMU. There is a reason why, for example, we've experienced recently, SASCO members are intimidating our members who are DASO members. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why even SASCO members that want to become DASO members are scared because they become intimidated and threatened even physically. There's the reason why when I was at the University of Limpopo with Mbalintuli, we were beaten up with chairs by SASCO members on the SRC. There's a reason, because with SRC governance comes access to massive budgets. And we look in here, the SRC budget as a total gross is up to 3 million rand. Now that is a lot of money. And if you have access to that and you choose to misuse and abuse your access to that and you're allowed to do it by the university and the student government, it's a lot of money. And it's worth intimidating people in some instances for SASCO, as we've seen in the past, and it's worth, and a lot of things take place around that. So it's not isolated here. And it raises serious questions around, you know, what does student leadership and student governance become about for some of these organizations? It's why we contested elections, and why in the past students have given us huge mandates, because they've seen that we practice clean governance. And it's something that we do not contest elections to have access to budgets, but rather to protect students from this type of abuse. And we've shown that in the past. We've always had this very clean record. We've never had a single blight on our record, in fact. But there's a reason why, and there's a reason why these SRC elections are important as well. You know, I just think that's important to understand. Even nationally, it's something important to understand, because it happens at other institutions. And that is where the violence and political intolerance really, in some cases, stem from.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, colleagues, I'd like to thank the media houses present here for joining us and ensuring that accountability is not circumvented in this process. And with that said, I'd like to draw close to this press conference. Thank you very much.
SASCO came into this year.